See if we're going to be live. Alright, I think we're live. Go ahead and share this out. Share this stream out. Alright guys, this is Josh from Football Talk with JB, and today I'm going to be using the Massey website, Massey Ratings website, MasseyRatings.com to, I'm going to be going over all the Week 1 games, and it also includes the point spread. Of course, you're not going to bet on high school football, but you know, it does include the point spreads and stuff to determine who the favorites for these games are. And, well, it's not wanting to cooperate. There we go. And the first game is Munford and Walter Wellborn. It's got Munford listed as a half-a-point favorite. No arguments there. I don't know a whole lot about either team, but I got no arguments there. I think Munford's a classification higher, so them being a half-a-point favorite is it makes a little bit of sense. Then we have Cordova and Oakman. This is all the Thursday games, by the way. We have Cordova and Oakman. It's got Cordova listed as a 3.5-point favorite. I'm not sure I agree with that, because Cordova's got a first-year head coach. Oakman, of course, seems to always be in the playoffs. So I would say I would honestly take Oakman in that game. But they got Cordova listed as a 3.5-point favorite. Georgiana and Greenville. It's got Greenville listed as a 28.5-point favorite. Greenville, of course, being a 5A school. Georgiana being a 1A school. Honestly, I'm going to say that point spread's a little too high. Georgiana's got a fairly good football team. They've got some athletes on their team. And I guess I could go over the predicted score, too. It's got Munford 29-28 over Walter Wellborn. It's got Cordova 28-25 over Oakman. And it's got Greenville 35-6 over Georgiana. I can assure you Greenville's probably not going to win by that much, if they win at all. I think Georgiana, even as a 1A school, has a chance to beat a 5A school in Greenville. And I wouldn't even really consider it an upset, because I mean, Greenville was 1-9 or 2-8 last year. Georgiana was a second-round playoff team, even in 1A. So I'm not sure. I don't agree with a 28.5 point spread. Spanish Fort and Fairhope. It's got Spanish Fort listed as a 6.5-point favorite. It's got them winning 27-20 over Fairhope. I can see it. Spanish Fort's a really good football team, and I think this might be the year Spanish Fort takes another step. So, as long as they don't run into Pike Road, because Pike Road's been the team to knock them off the last couple of years. I was checking. It says my stream would shut off. No, I've got excellent connection. Okay. But yeah, Spanish Fort, as long as they don't run into Pike Road again, because Pike Road's knocked them out the last couple of years, I could see Spanish Fort making a deep playoff run. White Plains and Talladega. It's got White Plains as an 11.5-point favorite over Talladega. I just think that Talladega's got some athletes on their team, and they've got a pretty good coach, I'd say, and they've got a new coach, Damian Dorsey, there. I don't agree with this point spread. I think Talladega has a chance to knock off White Plains. It's got White Plains 35-24 over Talladega. I think Talladega can. I think Talladega can pull it off. Curry and Carbon Hill. It's got Curry as a 1.5 point favorite, 28-27 over Carbon Hill. I honestly don't know much about these two teams, so I can't really speak on it. Thorsby and Isabella. It's got Isabella as a 18.5 point favorite over Thorsby. It's got them winning 38-20. I don't agree with that point spread. Give me Thorsby in the game. I think Thorsby beats Isabella. Muscle Shoals and Gadsden City. It's got Muscle Shoals as a 6.5 point favorite. It's got them winning 33-26 over Gadsden City. Honestly, I can see this game going either way, but I'm gonna say give me Muscle Shoals in this game. Southern Prep taking on Sparta Academy in the AHSAA. It's got Southern Prep as a 1.5 point favorite. 36-34 over Sparta Academy is the prediction, and I don't have any argument for it. I don't know much about AHSAA. Fayette County at Gordo. Gordo is a 31.5 point favorite over Fayette County, and it's got them winning 42-10. No argument with me. For me, Gordo is a really good football team. Fayette County hasn't necessarily been the best football team lately, so maybe the point spread's a little too high. But I mean, Arab at Albertville. Arab 27.5 point favorites. It's got them winning 41-13. The situation with Lee Osment has me thinking that Arab is not going to win this game by 27.5 points. Well, obviously they can't win by 27.5 points because there's no way to score a half a point in football, but you guys know what I mean. I don't think they're going to beat Albertville that bad. I think they'll still beat Albertville, but give me Arab by maybe about 14. Ramsey and Parker. This is going to be a great game. It's got Ramsey as a 5.5 point favorite, winning 28-22 over Parker. Give me Parker in this game. Give me Parker. Geraldine at Sardis. It's got Geraldine as a 25.5 point favorite, winning 40-14 over Sardis. No argument from me. Geraldine's a really good football team. Now, my school, Reeltown, taking on T.R. Miller. It's got T.R. Miller as a 13.5 point favorite. It's got them winning 34-20. Give me. I'm not going to give a prediction on this game. I'm not going to predict who wins, but I will say if T.R. Miller wins, I don't think they're winning by 13.5 points. Again, you can't score a half a point in football, but I don't think they're winning by 13. If anything, it's going to be a touchdown game either way, in my opinion. Clark County taking on Flomaton. It's got Flomaton as a 19.5 point favorite, winning 33-14. I think it's going to be a closer game than that, but I think Flomaton wins, but not by at least 19 points. Coleman at Bob Jones. I don't know much about these teams, but it's got a 20.5 point favorite for Bob Jones over Coleman. No argument for me. It's a 7A versus a 6A, so no argument for me there. All right, this is my game of the week. I'm doing 2 games of the week, and I'm gonna pick them. Well, I picked this one as my Thursday game of the week. North Miami Beach traveling to face Auburn. It's got Auburn winning 42-7. It's got Auburn as 34.5 point favorites. I think the game will be a little bit closer than that, but I do think Auburn's going to win the football game. Corner at Winfield. It's got Corner as a 5.5 point favorite, winning 34-28 over Winfield. No argument from me. Springville at Asheville. Springville is 34.5-point favorites over Asheville. That's got them winning 42-7. I think the game's going to be closer than that. I'm gonna go ahead and say give me Asheville in an upset over Springville. Give me Asheville in an upset. I know it's going to be a tough ask of Asheville, but give me Asheville in an upset. Pike Road taking on Prattville. Pike Road, of course, one of my more local teams. And Pike Road is a 0.5-point favorite. It's got them winning 28-27. No argument for me. I think it's going to be a great game between Pike Road and Prattville. And then we're still two more Thursday games. American Christian taking on Tuscaloosa Academy. It's got American Christian as a 26.5-point favorite, winning 41-14. I can assure you Tuscaloosa Academy is a lot better than losing than 26.5-point underdogs to American Christian. And the final Thursday game, which is Powerhouse Sports, one of Powerhouse Sports games of the week. Gainesville of Georgia traveling to Moody. North Miami Beach, by the way, is of course out of Florida. Gainesville traveling to Moody. It's got Gainesville as 35.5-point favorites. It's got them predicted to win 42-7. I think this game's going to be closer than 35 points. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I think Moody takes Gainesville to the wire. Give me Gainesville in a close game. I'm going to skip over that one. Yeah, I'm skipping over the AHSAA and whatever the heck First Assembly and Chilton Christian is. Don't ask me. Things acting up again. Alright, so moving on to BC Rain and Hillcrest Evergreen. It's got BC Rain as 21.5-point favorites, winning 35-14. It's going to be a lot closer than that. Coach Nard's a great coach, and I've interviewed him on this channel, obviously, and I think it's going to be a lot closer than that. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Hillcrest Evergreen won this game. Priceville at Columbia. Priceville is a 26.5-point favorite over Columbia. I see no problem with that. Columbia has been pretty rough for a while now. Rogers at Wilson. It's got Rogers as a 28.5-point favorite, winning 42-13. I don't know much about these teams. J.B. Pennington at Susan Moore. J.B. Pennington, 19.5-point favorites, winning 33-14. Once again, I don't know much about these teams. Skipping over that game, we got Carroll at Russell County. Carroll is 3.5-point favorites over Russell County. I'm going to predict Russell County beats Carroll outright. Yeah. Beulah at Abbeville. Beulah 28-21. They're 7.5-point favorites. I don't see a problem with that. It's 3A versus 2A, so yeah. McKenzie at Wilcox Central, 32-28. Wilcox Central, 3.5-point favorites. I guess I don't see a problem with that. Prattville Christian at Autaugoville. It's got Prattville Christian winning 42-8, 34.5-point favorites. I think the game's probably going to be closer than 34.5 points. We got West Blockton at Northside. West Blockton 28, Northside 22. It's got West Blockton as 5.5-point favorites. Alright. Donahoe at Galesville. Donahoe 26-24 over Galesville. 2.5-point favorites. Donahoe, I think Galesville probably wins this game. Murphy at Davidson. That's a 6A and a 7A school. 34-24 Davidson over Murphy. They're 9.5-point favorites. I don't see a problem with that one. DAR at Brindley Mountain. It's got DAR 28.5-point favorites. 42-14 over Brindley Mountain. Yeah, I don't really see a problem with that. Brindley Mountain hasn't been great for a while. Rehoboth at Ashford at Rehoboth. At Rehoboth's 34.5-point favorites. It's got them winning 42-7 over Ashford. I think that game's going to be closer. I, I don't I don't think Ashford's going to beat Rehoboth, but I think it's going to be a closer game than 34.5. I don't see 34.5 point favorites. Holt at RC Hatch. It's got Holt winning 30-14. They're 16.5 point favorites. Holt has struggled for a while, but so has RC Hatch. So I guess I don't see problems with that. And UMS Wright at St. Paul's. It's got St. Paul's as 15.5 point favorites, 29-14 over UMS Wright. I think the game's going to be a lot closer than 15.5. So, I think it'll be closer. West Morgan at Randolph Academy. They're just Randolph. But it's got West Morgan 42-20 as 22.5 point favorites. I think the game's probably going to be closer than that. Randolph County hosting Woodland. It's got Randolph County as 35.5 point favorites, 42-7 over Woodland. I don't necessarily see a problem with that. I think Randolph County will probably win that game pretty easily. Jasper at Brookwood. It's got Jasper 13.5 point favorites, 35-21 over Brookwood. Pretty sure Brookwood has struggled for a while now. You got Sylacauga at Central Coosa, 45-7 Sylacauga is the prediction. Sylacauga 38.5 point favorites. I don't have a problem with that. Cold Springs at Hanceville. I have no idea about either of these teams. It's got Hanceville winning 42-14, 27.5 point favorites. I'm pretty sure it's a 4A against the 2A, so, I don't know anything about either team. Jacksonville at Etowah. Jacksonville, it's got them winning 43-14. They're 29.5 point favorites. Honestly, I think Jacksonville might be able to win by more than that. Etowah is a program that's kind of in turmoil right now. And it's of no fault of the kids, obviously. I'm not blaming the kids, and I'm not dogging the kids either. I just think that with the situation going on, Jacksonville being the program that it is, put 2 and 2 together there. Bibb County hosting Chilton County. It's got Bibb County 14.5 point favorites, winning 34-20. I think the game will be a little bit closer than that. It's a rivalry game. Chilton County's got some pretty good players, so yeah, I think it'll be closer than that. Central of Clay taking on Hanley. That's going to be a battle. It's got Central Clay 12.5 point favorites, winning 33-20 right now. Honestly, I think the game will be a little bit closer than that. Glencoe at Southeastern. It's got Southeastern being 5.5 point favorites, 28-22 over Glencoe. Southeastern's a fairly successful program, so I could see it. Milry at Citronelle. It's got Citronelle 25.5 point favorites over Milry. I think it'll be a little bit closer than that. Milry, even though it's a 1A versus a 5A, Milry's a pretty doggone good 1A, so I'd say it's a little bit closer than that. Vincent at Winterboro. It's got 27.5 point favorites for Vincent, winning 41-14. I can assure you Vincent's not winning this game by 4 touchdowns. Winterboro has a lot of talent coming in. And Winterboro is going to be one of the teams challenging for 1A North this year. Mars Hill taking on Madison Academy. It's got Madison Academy 6.5 point favorites, winning 35-28. I don't really have a problem with this. I think it's going to be an excellent football game between Mars Hill and Madison Academy. Fort Payne at Scottsboro. It's got Fort Payne 5.5 point favorites, winning 32-27. Give me Scottsboro to win outright. Because Tyler Van is an excellent football coach. And I know it's his first year at Scottsboro. Give me Scottsboro to win this game. Colbert Heights at Cherokee. It's got Colbert Heights 34.5 point favorites, 42-7 over Cherokee. I don't know much about these teams. Thomasville at Leroy, 35-14. It's got Thomasville beating Leroy. 21.5-point favorites for Thomasville. 21.5 points underdog. Imagine having won 20 games in a row and being a 21.5-point underdog in your first game. This game is going to be closer than 21.5 points. I can assure you that. West End, Walnut Grove taking on Pleasant Valley. It's got West End as 4.5-point favorites over Pleasant Valley. Give me Pleasant Valley to win this game. Lincoln, 35-14 over Shelby County. They're 20.5-point favorites. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than that. Tallahassee taking on Montgomery Academy. It's got Montgomery Academy as 8.5-point favorites, 34-26 over Tallahassee. And I'm picking Tallahassee to beat Montgomery Academy. Mountain Brook at Demopolis. It's got Mountain Brook 33.5-point favorites over Demopolis. It's got them winning 41-7. I don't see that. Demopolis is definitely a lot better than 33.5-point underdogs. And then Southern Academy, Morgan Academy. I'm not worried about that one. Choctawhatchee, Florida, traveling to Gulf Shores. It's got Choctawhatchee as 6.5-point favorites over Gulf Shores, winning 28-21. Give me Gulf Shores to win. Victory Christian at Summerton Christian. It's got Victory Christian as 20.5-point favorites, winning 35-14 over Summerton Christian. So I wonder if that means that they think that Victory Christian is going to be a pretty solid football team this year. Personally, I think they will be. They hired Matt Griffith, former Sylacauga coach, to be their head coach. I think Victory Christian is going to be a pretty solid football program this year, and I think they're going to be competing in a few years. So I agree with the 20.5-point favorites. Hale County traveling to Pickens Academy, who is a new AHSAA program. And, yeah. Hale County, 34.5-point favorites. It's got them winning 42-7. I don't really have an argument there. It's 3A versus 1A. And you want to talk about a physical game, a physical team to play in your very first AHSAA game. Hale County, I remember back in 2016 when they played Tallahassee. That was a physical. That was a physical football. Sorry. That was a physical football team. Centerpoint at Bessemer City. Centerpoint, 9.5-point favorites. It's got them winning 30-20. I think Centerpoint will win by a little bit more than that. Baker at Theodore. Theodore, 28-14. They're 13.5-point favorites over Baker. I think it's going to be closer than that. I think Coach Juan Johnson's going to have Baker fired up. Leeds at Mortimer Jordan. It's got Leeds 1.5-point favorites, winning 28-27. No argument there. I think it'll be a good football game. Verbena at Holy Spirit Catholic. It's got Verbena 12.5-point favorites, winning 34-21. I don't know much about either team. Brewer at Hayden. Hayden, 14.5-point favorites, winning 35-20. Once again, I don't know much about either team. Trinity at Holtville. Trinity, of course, the second next week. Trinity and Reeltown will play. Of course, Reeltown, my alma mater. So it's got Trinity as 14.5-point favorites, winning 35-20 over Holtville. I've got no argument there. 35-14, sorry. It's got them as 21.5-point favorites. So I've got no argument there. Enterprise at Andalusia. Enterprise, 26.5-point underdogs. It's got them going down 40-14. I just cannot see Andalusia losing by almost 4 touchdowns on senior night. Yes, they're opening their season with a senior night game. I don't see them losing by 4. Now, I think Enterprise will win the game, but I don't think they're going to win by 4 touchdowns. I just don't see it. I mean, Coach Trent Taylor is going to have Andalusia ready to compete. Sachs at Horseshoe Bend. It's got Sachs as 12.5-point favorites over Horseshoe Bend, winning 34-22. I agree with it. Tarrant at Montevallo. It's got Montevallo 35.5-point favorites over Tarrant. 42-7 victory. I don't see a problem with it. Pinson Valley at Central Phoenix City. Central is 37.5-point favorites, winning 44-7. I think it'll be a little bit closer than that, but I don't think it's going to be far off. Lee Huntsville at Grissom. Grissom is 20.5-point favorites. It's got them winning 35-14. Don't know much about either team. Slocum at Houston County. It's got Slocum as 23.5-point favorites, winning 37-14. I mean, all right. I don't know much about either team. Lee Montgomery at Paul Bryant. I think Lee Montgomery is Percy Julian. It's got Percy Julian as 29.5-point favorites, winning 42-13 over Paul Bryant. Paul Bryant, coached by former Alabama wide receiver Christian Jones, by the way. And he didn't get the job too long ago, so I don't see a problem with Paul Bryant being the 29.5-point underdog right now. Sumter County at Choctaw County. Who's Sumter County? Or is that Sumter Central? Did Sumter Central become Sumter County now? Anyways, they're 6.5-point underdogs to Choctaw County. I don't really know much about either team, so. Pelham at Pell City. It's got Pelham as 7.5-point favorites, winning 28-21. Give me Pell City to win this game outright. Give me Pell City. Pisgah at Fairview. It's got Fairview winning 42-14 over Pisgah. 27.5-point underdog for Pisgah. I don't see it. I think Pisgah, it's going to be a closer game. Give me Fairview in the end, but I think Pisgah probably it's a little bit closer than that. And then Cleveland at Whitesburg Christian. It's got Cleveland 21.5-point favorites. Fun fact, Cleveland is coached by my 8th grade history teacher, Coach Will Glaze. And I agree, they're 21.5-point favorites. It's got them winning 36-14 over Whitesburg Christian, and I don't have a problem with that. And there is quite a few games to go over. Alright, we got Dora at Minor. Minor 29.5-point favorites over Dora. 42-13 Minor. I don't know. Deschler at Russellville. It's got Russellville 21.5-point favorites over Deschler. I'm not going to go over these predicted scores because I mean they don't really matter. Marbury at Stanhope Elmore. It's got Stanhope Elmore's 35.5-point favorites over Marbury. Sparkman taking on Spain Park, 27.5-point favorite for Spain Park. I think I agree with that. Lauderdale County taking on Lexington. It's got Lauderdale County 16.5-point favorites over Lexington. I think it'll be closer. Sipsey Valley, Greene County. It's got Sipsey Valley 34.5-point favorites over Greene County. I mean, I can see it. Winona, Jackson Nolan. It's got Winona 0.5-point favorite over Jackson Nolan. I think this game could go either way. Jackson Nolan, coached by former UAB quarterback and NFL quarterback Joe Webb now. So I say that game can go either way. LaFleur taking on Fairfield. It's got Fairfield as 25.5-point favorites over LaFleur. I don't really have an argument for that. Montgomery Catholic, St. James. It's got Montgomery Catholic as 28.5-point favorites over St. James. Closer than that. Piedmont, Cherokee County. It's got Cherokee County as 23.5-point favorites over Piedmont. I'm going to say it's closer than that. Austin at Hartselle. It's got Austin as 1.5-point favorites over Hartselle. I don't really see a problem with that. Hartselle breaking in a new coach. Lamar County taking on South Lamar. It's got Lamar County as 13.5-point favorites. I think it'll be a little bit closer than that. Elmore County, Dadeville. It's got Elmore County as only 2.5-point favorites over Dadeville. I think Elmore County wins by more than that. Saraland taking on Jackson. It's got Saraland as 34.5-point favorites over Jackson. I think that game's going to be closer than 34.5 points. Like, they make it seem like it's not even worth watching. Monroe County taking on Florala. It's got Florala 17.5-point favorites. I don't have a problem with that. Skipping over the next one, we got Wicksburg, Providence Christian. It's got Wicksburg 6.5-point favorites over Providence Christian. I don't have a problem with that one. McIntosh taking on Satsuma. It's got Satsuma 34.5-point favorites over McIntosh. I think it'll be a little bit closer than that probably. St. Michael Catholic, coached by Phillip Rivers, taking on Bayside Academy. Yes, that Phillip Rivers. St. Michael's 6.5-point favorites. I think they'll win by a little bit more. Well, you got Phillip Rivers, former North Carolina State quarterback and NFL quarterback, taking on Barrett Trotter, who's former Auburn quarterback. So, two former college quarterbacks battling it out as head coaches. But Bayside had Sammy Dunn transfer out. So, I think St. Michael wins by a little bit more than 6.5 points. Central Florence taking on Colbert County. Central Florence 11.5-point favorites. I think it'll be closer than that. New Brockton taking on Pike Liberal Arts. Pike Lib is 12.5-point favorites. I don't see that. It's a 2A school versus a 4A school. I think it'll be closer than that. Keith and Calhoun. It's got Keith 28.5-point favorites over Calhoun. I mean, you know, I guess I see it. Hueytown, Clay Chalkville. This might be a pretty good one. Hueytown is 25.5-point underdogs to Clay Chalkville. I think it'll be a little bit closer than that. Gunnersville taking on Southside Gadsden. Gunnersville 13.5-point favorites over Southside Gadsden. Think it'll be closer than that. Haleyville taking on West Point. I don't know anything about either team, but they got Haleyville as 8.5-point favorites. East Lawrence taking on Lawrence County. Lawrence County is 31.5-point favorites over East Lawrence. I haven't known Lawrence County to be a really good football team, so to see them as 31.5-point favorites at all is surprising. Shades Valley taking on Woodlawn. Shades Valley 31.5-point favorites over Woodlawn. I think that game will probably be closer. Washington Penn at Williamson. Who? We're going to skip over that one. We're going to skip over these next couple. I don't know who. Now I got to look this up. Like, who the heck is Washington Penn? Booker T. Washington out of Florida. So they got Williamson as a 14.5-point favorite over BTW out of Florida. I think they're out of Miami, Florida. I don't know much about that team out of Miami, Florida. But Williamson is a very loaded team. Alright, I'm gonna skip over some of these. Well, I'm skipping over the AHSAA because I don't know much about AHSAA. I kind of want to just go over some of these. Well, I do cover the whole state, so. Clements, Gardendale, or James Clemens taking on Gardendale. It's got James Clemens 7.5-point favorites over Gardendale. I think it'll be a little bit closer. Gaston, Asbury. It's got Gaston 13.5-point favorites over Asbury. I think that game will probably be about that. Viger Blunt. It's got Viger 7.5-point favorites over Blunt. I think Viger wins by more. East Limestone, Westminster Christian. It's got Westminster Christian as 17.5-point favorites. I'll go along with it. Wetumpka Beauregard. Wetumpka's 27.5 point favorites over Beauregard. I think it'll be closer than that. Charles Henderson, 28.5 point favorites over Pike County. Once again, I think it'll be closer than that. Smith Station, 27.5 point favorites over Shaw, Georgia. I don't know about that one, Chief. Smith Station being 27.5 point favorites over anybody is surprising. St. John Paul II at Elkmont. It's got St. John Paul II as 31.5 point favorites. I don't know much about either team, so. Chickasaw at Robertsdale. 7A Robertsdale taking on 2A Chickasaw. It's got Robertsdale 34.5 point favorites, and I mean they're playing a 2A school, so. Elba at Luverne. It's got Elba 20.5 point favorites over Luverne. I mean, I'll go with it. Sand Rock Spring Garden. It's got Spring Garden 29.5 point favorites over Sand Rock. Well, I think it'll be closer than that. Cedar Bluff at Valley Head. Valley Head 23.5 point favorites over Cedar Bluff. I think it's going to be a lot closer than that. Booker T. Washington at Eufaula. It's got Eufaula 21.5 point favorites over BTW. I think BTW wins this game outright. So, take that. Tharptown at Danville. It's got Danville 35.5 point favorites over Tharptown. Sure. Florence at Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa. Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa 28.5 point favorites over Florence. I agree with it. Hillcrest is a really good team. Valley at Glenwood School. Valley 13.5 point favorites over Glenwood School. I'll agree with that. Houston Academy at GW Long. Houston Academy 24.5 point favorites over GW Long. Yeah, I can see it. Jemison at St. Clair County. Jemison St. Clair 18.5 point favorites over Jemison. I can definitely see that. Billingsley at Greensboro. Greensboro 13.5 point favorites over Billingsley. I think it'll be closer than that. McGill-Tulane at Daphne. Daphne 6.5 point favorites over McGill-Tulane. Give me McGill-Tulane to win outright. Springwood at I can skip over that one. Davis at Hewitt Trustful. That's Jag. Jag at Hewitt Trustful. It's got Hewitt Trustful 39.5 point favorites over Jag. I think it'll be a little bit closer to that. Notasulga and Lochapoka got canceled. Orange Beach at Alberta. Alberta 19.5 point favorites over Orange Beach. I don't personally see that. I think Orange Beach probably wins. Geneva County taking on Pleasant Home. Geneva County 28.5 point favorites over Pleasant Home. Sure. Excel taking on Lee Scott Academy. Lee Scott 18.5 point favorites over Excel. I think this game's going to be a lot closer than that. Mobile Christian taking on Chelsea. Mobile Christian 13.5 point favorites over Chelsea. I can see it. Headland Dale County. Headland 26.5 point favorites over Dale County. I can see it. Escambia County taking on Alabama Christian. Alabama Christian 13.5 point favorites over Escambia County. I can see that one. Aniana taking on Locust Fork. Aniana 13.5 point favorites over Locust Fork. I think it'll be closer than that. Opelika taking on Benjamin Russell. Opelika 15.5 point favorites over Benjamin Russell. I think it's closer than that. Addison at Winston County. Addison 12.5 point, or Winston County 12.5 point favorites over Addison. Addison's usually pretty good, so I'm gonna say it's probably closer than that. Childersburg Fayetteville. Childersburg 25.5 point favorites over Fayetteville. Last time Childersburg played on 1A school, they lost to Winterboro, so I'd say this game's probably going to be closer. Huntsville Hazel Green. Huntsville 34.5 point favorites over Hazel Green. Sure. Washington County and Cottage Hill Christian. Cottage Hill Christian 35.5 point favorites over Washington County. I don't see that at all. I think Washington County possibly wins this football game. Washington County is going to be a lot better. Northridge Calera. It's got Northridge 13.5 point favorites over Calera. I don't know much about either team. Kinston at Zion Chapel. It's got Zion Chapel 13.5 point favorites. I mean, I guess. Grayson Thompson. It's got Thompson 17.5 point favorites over Grayson. I'd say this game's going to be closer than that. Mount Zion at Georgia at Ranburne. It's got Mount Zion 17.5 point favorites over Ranburne. I think that one will be a little bit closer. Oxford at Central Carrollton out of Georgia. It's got Central Carrollton 2.5 point favorites over Oxford. Give me Oxford to win. Oak Mountain at Briarwood Christian. Briarwood Christian 9.5 point favorites over Oak Mountain. I think Briarwood wins by more. Vestavia 33.5 point favorites over Carver Montgomery. I think it's going to be closer than that. I do think Vestavia wins just because Carver, you don't know what their team camaraderie is going to be like. Having merged Sidney Lanier and Carver together. Weaver at Oak Grove. Oak Grove 16.5 point favorites over Weaver. I don't know much about them. Dallas County, Francis Marion. Dallas County 17.5 point favorites. North Jackson at Sylvania. Sylvania 30.5 point favorites. John Carroll Catholic at Homewood. Homewood 26.5 point favorites. I think I agree with Sylvania and Homewood being favored by so much because they're both very good football programs. Athens at May Jemison. It's got Athens as 34.5 point favorites. I don't agree. I think May Jemison is going to make it a lot closer than that. Sheffield at Decatur Heritage. Decatur Heritage 15.5 point favorites over Sheffield. I think it's closer than that. Foley taking on Baldwin County. It's got Baldwin County as half-point favorites over Foley. I don't agree with that one. I think Foley wins. Midfield at Huffman. It's got Huffman 27.5 point favorites over Midfield, which is crazy because Huffman didn't score a single point last year. But I do think Huffman will be improved this year. Of course, it's not hard to improve from not scoring a single point, but I think Huffman wins a game or two this year. I'd give me Huffman over Midfield. I don't know about 27.5 points, but give me a Huffman. Eider at Section 5.5 point favorites. I don't know much about either team. Meek at Lynn. Lynn 27.5 point favorites over Meek. Lynn is really good. Appalachian at Holly Pond. Holly Pond 1.5 point favorites. Give me Appalachian to win outright. Pickens County at Aliceville. Aliceville 14.5 point favorites over Pickens County. I don't know. I think it's going to be a better game than that. Madison County at Boaz. Boaz 31.5 point favorites over Madison County. And I agree with that one. Howland Home 4.5 point favorites over Strawn. I think Howland Home wins, and I think it'll be about that. Probably. McAdory taking on Pleasant Grove. Pleasant Grove 19.5 point favorites over McAdory. And I agree with that one. Wadley, B.B. Comer. Comer's 30.5 point favorites over Wadley. I don't agree with that one. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I think Comer wins the game, but I think it's a close game. Blackshear taking on Marengo. Blackshear's 20.5 point favorites over Marengo. I don't agree with that one either. New Hope taking on Ohatchee. Ohatchee 27.5 point favorites over New Hope. I don't agree with that one. I think Coach Dax Nunn, the new passing game coordinator, he's going to have New Hope. He's going to help have New Hope ready, and I think it's going to be a closer game than that. Faultville taking on Venamont. Is that how you say it? They're 3.5 point favorites for Venamont over Faultville. I don't know much about either team. Lafayette 35.5 point favorites over Elwood Christian. I can agree with that one. Decatur at Buckhorn. It's got Decatur 12.5 point favorites over Buckhorn. I don't know much about either team. Linden at Fultondale. It's got Fultondale 22.5 point favorites over Linden. I don't necessarily agree with that one. Park Crossing 16.5 point favorites over Selma. I don't necessarily agree with that one. Shoals Christian at Belgreen. Belgreen's football program is not playing football this year, so that game won't be happening. Pineview Christian and Marshall Christian, I don't even know who either of those teams are. Solgent taking on Marion. And by the way, that's no disrespect to the 8-man football, to the AHSAA, to any other association we have in the state of Alabama. I just don't know much about either of them. I'm going to have to get brushed up on them. Sulligent, Marion County. Sulligent, 31.5 point favorites over Marion County. Sulligent's really good, so I can see it. Geneva, Goshen. Goshen, 7.5 point favorites over Geneva. I can see it. Goshen's going to be really good this year. North Sand Mountain, Woodville. North Sand Mountain, 27.5 point favorites over Woodville. I don't see that one. I think it's going to be a much better game than that. West Limestone at Clements. West Limestone, 24.5 point favorites over Clements. Sure. Sweetwater taking on Southeast Lauderdale. I'm guessing that's out of Florida. Sweetwater, 16.5 point favorites. Sure. Mary G. Montgomery taking on Pace, Florida. Mary G. Montgomery, 1.5 point favorites over Pace. I can definitely see it being a pretty good game. Coosa Christian taking on Pierce County. This might be the biggest point spread that I've seen on here. 41.5 point favorite for Pierce County, Georgia over Coosa Christian. I don't agree with that one. I think Coosa keeps it closer than that. Northside Methodist taking on Patala Charter out of Georgia. Northside Methodist, 16.5 point favorites. I don't know much about either team. Randolph Clay, Georgia taking on Cottonwood. Cottonwood, 13.5 point favorites over Randolph Clay. And Cottonwood's going to be a pretty good football team this year, so I can definitely see it. Chiles, Florida taking on Dothan. Dothan, 20.5 point favorites over Chiles, Florida. So that's a little surprising. Central Tuscaloosa taking on Tuscaloosa County. Tuscaloosa County, 31.5 point favorites over Central Tuscaloosa. Tuscaloosa County, of course, coached by Coach Miles Holcomb, who comes from Southside Gadsden, and I can definitely see Tuscaloosa County making a statement early on. Tennessee School for the Deaf taking on Alabama School for the Deaf. I'm gonna pay respect to those schools, and I'm gonna mention them. Alabama School for the Deaf favored by Deaf, favored by 25.5 points. And then the final game, Southeastern at Susan Moore. I've already mentioned that one. 4.5 point favorite for Susan Moore. So they changed it up. But I think Southeastern probably wins that game. And that's going to do it for all the games this week in week 0. Or week 1, as some people would rather say, because week 0 is kind of weird. But yeah, that's going to do it for all the games, guys. And I'll see y'all later. Peace out, everybody.